Okay, welcome everyone to the weekly Qdabra webinar. It's about 8:05 a.m., which is usually when we start our webinars, a little bit after the hour to give people a chance to log on. This week we are going to be talking about PDF ShareForms, which is a SharePoint-based PDF form solution package. My name is Jennifer Lindsay. For those of you who don't know me, I am an InfoPath developer and project manager here at Qdabra. I've done a couple of these webinars before, but it's been a little while. And this particular webinar today is part of a continuing series on alternatives to InfoPath and SharePoint. Now, before we jump into the presentation, I just want to mention a little bit about Qdabra for those of you who are new to this particular, to our company. First of all, I'd like to make sure that you can all hear me. Please let me know, just type yes or something into the chat window or one of the question windows. Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Pete. All right. So a little bit about Qdabra. We are a SharePoint, InfoPath, and in general, eForms development and consulting company. We have a very active community forum at infopathddev.com. It includes a bunch of blogs and some sample download forms, as well as free support if you're having issues with developing your InfoPath form or getting it to play well with your SharePoint site. We can provide you some feedback. We also have support as well if you can't wait for a forum response or your problem's a little more complicated than just a small, maybe a small little bobble with your form. We also have pay-as-you-go support options that are available through our website, Qdabra.com. We also do consulting work. If you have a rather large project and it looks like it's more than you think you and your team can handle, or you'd like to make sure that it gets implemented quickly and efficiently, we do consulting work for hire. We have now 4 InfoPath MVPs on staff who can help you to build the solution. We also do SharePoint, custom SharePoint development. We have experience with SharePoint workflows as well. So you can really get a good start on your consulting project, and it's free for a consultation. Just go ahead and call us up or send an email to our support hotline, and we'll help you get on the right path there. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into what we'll be talking about this week. We're going to cover the 2 main products that PDF ShareForms offers. This is a separate company that is offering custom solutions for PDF forms integrated with SharePoint. The simpler product that they offer is called PDF ShareForms On Demand. This is a cloud-based PDF form development. So they provide the cloud, you provide the PDF forms. You can upload your own PDF form templates. They have a few sample templates to get you started, which is especially good for exploring the environment. And you manage these templates entirely online through the interface that they provide to their cloud hosting. You have the option of submitting your forms to a SharePoint library, or you can also submit them via email if you want to completely bypass the SharePoint environment. The other product that they offer, which is the really meaty one, and we'll spend the majority of our demo time today going over that, is PDF ShareForms Enterprise. This is actually a SharePoint embedded and integrated PDF designer as well as viewer. You have the ability to design rich templates online, deploy them to SharePoint libraries. You can also submit the forms that you design from these templates. The forms can be submitted via library, they can be submitted via email, and they also support anonymous submission, which is something that InfoPath currently doesn't support for browser-based forms. So that's a nice little bonus there. As far as the PDF designer, there is support for advanced controls, complicated form logic, and it also allows you to do scripting. So you can script your own complicated logic rules behind the scenes as well. Both of these products are available for SharePoint 2010 and 2013. If you're still on 2007, sorry, no support for you there. And it's also available for mobile devices as well. So this is a pretty comprehensive product. So why would you want to do this? Well, PDF is a very widely used and accepted format that many people are already familiar with. The SharePoint integration of the PDF ShareForms products makes it very easy to adopt if you're already working inside a SharePoint environment. Your users will already be used to the SharePoint environment as well. This is a codeless solution, and you'll see I put an asterisk there because as I've been exploring the environment, in order to get some of the functionality that is built in to InfoPath that you're probably used to using, in order to do some of that, you will actually need to add a little bit of JavaScript behind the scenes to the rule. So I've put an asterisk by codeless solution, and I'm sure that the developers at PDF ShareForms are working on enlarging the set of native codeless rules and logic that you can use as we speak. But for right now, in order to get some of the basic InfoPath logic, you do need to add a little bit of scripting. I'll show you that in the demo. As far as the enterprise, this is it's an online designer. There's no need to install software locally. This is great because if you happen to be if you're an InfoPath form designer and you happen to be in front of a computer that doesn't have InfoPath Filler installed and doesn't have the templates you've been working on, well, then you can't continue development because this designer is online and the templates are stored online in a special SharePoint library. You can be in front of any computer as long as it has a browser and you have access to your internal SharePoint site. You can log on and you can continue developing your PDF forms. And as I mentioned before, you can support anonymous submission to libraries. This is great if you have users who are, perhaps you have an outward-facing SharePoint site and your users won't always be logged on. They can simply submit the forms anonymously. Some of the cons for this is if you're currently working within an InfoPath environment, there's no compatibility with InfoPath. So if you have some custom designed InfoPath forms, you're submitting that data to a library, if you wanted to switch over to using PDF ShareForms, you'd have to essentially rebuild the form in the PDF ShareForms product itself. Another thing that the product currently doesn't support are actions in preview mode. So if you're experienced with developing forms in InfoPath, you know that you can preview the form inside InfoPath Designer and you can get a sense of how your form's going to act. You can use the preview mode to do a lot of debugging before you actually deploy your forms. Well, unfortunately, right now, and I'm sure this is something that the developers, again, are working on, actions are disabled in preview mode, so you actually have to deploy the form, and I would suggest deploying it to a test library in order to test the actions that you've built into the form and the logic that's been built in behind those actions. Okay. Let's cover a few more details about PDF ShareForms On Demand, which is the cloud-based product where you don't need your own SharePoint farm or SharePoint installation. You can simply use their interface. You sign up for an account through the PDF ShareForms website. You can either use an existing PDF form template or you can upload your own. If you do upload your own template, you will have to create this using Adobe Acrobat. There's a 30-day free trial available for that if you want to get started on that if you don't already have Adobe Acrobat. You publish this template to the cloud. There are a bunch of different configurations and options that you can configure when you do that. I'll show that in the demo. And then there are a couple of different submit options. You can submit to your own SharePoint library if you have SharePoint, and you can also submit via email. So in that case, no SharePoint is required at all. So you can actually use these PDF forms without ever needing SharePoint. You submit the forms via email and you only need the Adobe, the free PDF reader software from Adobe in order to read the forms that you receive via email. So let's take a look at a quick demo of the PDF ShareForms On Demand. This is the Get Started page that you're looking at right now once you log in and sign up for the PDF ShareForms On Demand trial. They have both sample forms and you can upload your own forms. Let's take a look at one of the sample forms. And these are the different steps here on the left that you need to go through in order to configure the particular form you've chosen. Let's go ahead and pick the quote form. That's a relatively simple form, and this is just a stock form here. There's no ability to customize it. If you wanted to customize a quote form, you'd have to, again, design your own in Adobe Acrobat and then upload that. You have the ability to rename the form. You could add a bit of a description. Those of you who've published InfoPath forms to SharePoint libraries know about the names and the descriptions of libraries. So we've chosen our template now. We can provide sample data, which will be displayed, auto-populated when a user opens up a new form. Let's see. I'm just going to pick some very easy numbers here. Let's do, there we go. So I've just given some sample data that will be displayed on the form. And now in step 3, this is where I choose how I want the forms to be collected. I can either send them to an email account, I can send them to a document library in SharePoint Online. I'm going to choose that option. And then next, it should ask me for the information for my SharePoint Online account. You'll see I've used this before. It remembered the site that I have set up for this. And let's see, I get to choose the document library. Now remember, these are not InfoPath forms, so you're not going to be choosing form libraries here. You're going to be choosing the more generic document library that SharePoint offers. I'm just going to use the generic documents library that comes with any SharePoint site you create. I have the option here to enter a path to a folder as well. I already have a folder created on my site called Quotes. So all of the forms that get submitted from this particular template through on demand will go directly into that folder in my documents library. And here I have the option to configure some of the fields in the PDF form. I can map them to existing columns in my SharePoint documents library. And you don't need to map these. If I don't want to, I'll just pick a couple of random fields. It's not really going to matter what I pick for the purposes of this demo. Let's just do a subtotal. There we go. Okay. And then the very final step here is you can either download the form template that you've just customized here, or you have a link that's available for distribution, and this is going to be the public-facing link that users can visit in order to fill out the forms. So I've copied that to my clipboard, and now it is absolutely configured. So let's go ahead and finish, and I'm going to navigate. I'm actually going to click this link to navigate to the link that allows users to fill out the form. Let me go ahead and click that. And after Internet Explorer is done thinking, you should see the PDF form that we just customized here. So over here is the data that we typed in on the very first one, and we now have a quote form that we can fill out. Oops, there we go. Okay, my computer is being a little slow today, so I'll just fill this out real quickly. And none of the fields here are really required. Okay, and we'll go ahead and just submit this form so we can see how it works. So PDF ShareForms is currently submitting the form to the document library. It gives you a nice submission message here to let your users know that the form has been submitted correctly. And over here, I have my documents library on the site that I configured. And inside the quotes folder, you will see here is the quote form that was just submitted. I'll go ahead and open that up. You can see here is the data that I actually typed into the form. So that's a PDF ShareForms on demand. As I said, you also have the option of configuring these forms to be submitted to an email account as well. In that case, you would simply receive an email that would have the PDF form as an attachment, and you could open up the attachment. It would look just like the form I opened up from the library. And of course, you also have the ability to upload your own templates and do some configuration of those as well. But you cannot, if you want to design the template, you need to use Adobe Acrobat or another PDF form design software. You can't do that with PDF forms, ShareForms on demand. Okay, so that is on demand. I will move on now, and let's take a look real quickly. Let's take a look at, let me go back to my slides, and we're going to take a look at the other PDF ShareForms product, which is Enterprise. And this is the big kahuna product here. You must install this as a WSP package on your SharePoint server farm. So this requires SharePoint Central Administration credentials. You need access to, you actually need access to the SharePoint Central Administration, not just to the SharePoint site itself. The product is installed on all the SharePoint sites on your server farm. So it's one install, and it's available on all of your SharePoint sites that are hosted on that particular farm. The main feature of PDF ShareForms Enterprise is the Designer. This is a browser-based PDF form designer. It supports rich controls modeled on the InfoPath control set. It also supports complex rule logic, including custom C# and JavaScript scripts. And it supports data connections, a lot of the data connections that you've come to know and love, SharePoint list and library data connections, as well as other different types of data connections through business connectivity services, which is another Microsoft SharePoint product. If you're not familiar with business connectivity services, I believe we've done webinars on that in the past. If not, there's plenty of information that you can use to find out more about BCS on the web. You can submit forms to SharePoint libraries. You can submit them via email. You can also have the forms submit anonymously. And the user interface for PDF ShareForms Enterprise is completely integrated with the SharePoint site itself. So once you've installed it on your server farm, in order to access all of the features of Enterprise, you simply navigate to the SharePoint site. So again, there's no software that needs to be installed locally on any of your users' machines or any of your developers' machines. Everything happens through the SharePoint site. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at PDF ShareForms Enterprise. Now, once you've installed the WSP package on your server farm, it will create a special library called the PDF ShareForms Templates Library. And this is where you will design and store all of your PDF ShareForms templates. Now, in order to create a new template, you still have the ability to import templates. So if, again, you're more familiar with Adobe Acrobat and you want to design your templates there, you can do that, and you can simply import the templates to this library. This is where all of the templates need to reside in order for them to be used on your SharePoint site. So we're going to create a new template. And there are a couple of configuration templates that you can do. You can either do a list template, and this is analogous to the InfoPath list forms that are bound to the list data structure. Or you can create a blank dynamic template. This is like creating a generic InfoPath form that's not particularly bound to any list or library. Let's see, Dick asks, is there one template library per farm? No, there's going to be one template library per SharePoint site. So if you have multiple SharePoint sites on the farm, you'll get one template library per SharePoint site. So I'm going to create a blank dynamic template. And I have the ability to name this. I'm just going to name this test so I can show you the designer mode, and then we'll switch over to a sample expense report that I've already built. You have the ability to use an existing site content type. If you wanted to use a different type of content type, you could choose that. You can create a completely new content type if you'd like to do that. Or the choice that's more commonly chose is to simply make it a document library content type. These PDF files are treated by SharePoint as documents. So it makes sense to associate them with a particular document library. I'm just going to pick the default documents library here, and it's going to detect the that this content type is a document. Okay, and that's all we need to do to configure this. So it's created a blank template. It's going to now show me the designer mode. And here is the PDF ShareForms Designer. As you can see, the layout is very similar to InfoPath. It was certainly modeled on InfoPath. Over here on the right, you have the toolbox. Now this is analogous to the controls section in InfoPath that you usually find up here on the ribbon. They've chosen to simply put it off here on the right. You can see that there are many different types of controls that you're familiar with. And one of the nice features is they have some defaults here. So there's a default SharePoint submit button. You can only see a B there. Trust me that it says button. You have a print button. You do have the ability to print these PDF files, which is another advantage over InfoPath as far as printing browser forms. As you may recall, InfoPath only has native print capability in filler mode, not in browser mode. And over here you have, down here you have fields that you can add. And I like this because there are some nice defaults here. So if you want a field that has email address formatting, that's already pre-configured. If you want a text field that's already pre-configured with validation for phone numbers, that's already there. There's a password field, which is very nice, so anything you type into it will be represented as asterisk, like you're used to in password fields. And there are a whole bunch of different other types of fields. You have support for image fields. There's also support for digital signatures. And you also have labels as well. You can have image labels, and these are sort of just like typing just text directly into the form that the user will not be able to interact with. That's what the label control is. Because this is PDF, it's still paginated. This is different from InfoPath as well. So you will have pages in the forms. You can include a label at the bottom that will basically tell you this is page 2 out of 10. There are also sections. I'm sure you're used to sections in InfoPath as well. We have regular sections that are just static sections, as well as repeating sections. And there's something that's a little different here is for the repeating sections, you actually have the choice of choosing where the different buttons that insert and delete and move up and move down the repeating sections, you have a choice of where they appear. In InfoPath, as you may recall, those only appear on the little menu on the side. There's a little blue arrow or gray arrow usually, and you click that and you see all of those different options. Add field, add item, remove item, move it up, move it down. Here you can actually configure where they appear, and when I show you the expense report form that I've built, you'll be able to see those. You can also configure the text that appears on them as well. Okay, so let me just start building something here. I'm going to drag, oops, well, let me actually choose a section. I'm going to drag a section onto the form. And it auto-names these sections. I don't necessarily like their auto-naming. section 1. So I'll just call this section 1. And here you see a section that's been just dropped onto the designer. You can expand this, contract it, however you want. One big difference between PDF ShareForms Designer and InfoPath is there's no ability to insert tables. So you may be used to using tables to add some structure to your form, align different fields. Instead, there's an invisible grid behind here, and different sections and fields, as you drag them on the form, will be sort of snapped into that grid. And you have the ability to adjust the fine grainness of the grid if you want. Now off here on the left, you'll notice that there's a hierarchy section. This is something that's not in InfoPath. And all this is a hierarchical representation of all of the controls that have been dragged and dropped onto the design pane layout. So let's see, I'm going to put just a generic text. Why is my mouse skipping? I'm going to just drag a text field onto here. It's going to force me to name it. I'll just call it name. And you'll see it auto-generates the field name down here. You'll see on the bottom right, after I'm done configuring these options, it will create a field in the schema behind this form as well. And that's what this data field section is for. You can either auto-create a new field. InfoPath does this automatically. If you drag and drop a control onto the design pane, it auto-creates and it calls it field 1 or field 26 or whatever field number you're on. Here, you have the ability, before you've even finished dragging the control onto the design pane, to either auto-create a new field, which we'll have to do in this case because we have no fields, or you can map it to an existing data field. With InfoPath, if you drag and drop a control, it auto-creates that field 26 or whatever, and then you have to actually go and delete that new field. And then if you want to assign the control to an existing field, here you can totally bypass that step. But we're going to auto-create a new one, and you can also configure linking to the SharePoint columns in the library that you've associated with this template. You can auto-create a new column. You can choose not to link it to a SharePoint column, or you can map it to an existing column. I'm going to choose the auto-create new column. And this is equivalent to the promoted properties in InfoPath Designer, which in InfoPath you configure completely separately under the promoted properties menu. It's nice here because you can do that linking immediately as you're creating fields, so you don't have to, forget to do your promoted properties or whatever. You can configure that immediately right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click Create, and I now have a text box control called Name on my design pane, and down here you'll see that I have a data field called Name as well. It's a text field, and this little blue icon over here indicates that it is mapped to a SharePoint column called Name. So that's another nice thing about this PDF ShareForms Designer that InfoPath doesn't have. You can look at the fields pane, at all of the fields that are in your form, and instantly see which ones are mapped to what columns. With InfoPath, you'd actually have to go in and open up the promoted properties and scroll through that list to see what's been mapped to what SharePoint column, and to adjust the mapping as well. Okay, so I've added a name field. Let me go ahead and just add a phone number field. We'll call this phone. And we're going to just leave auto-create everything. And as you'll see this, you notice that this snapped at the exact same row level as the name field. So this is what I mean by the snapping to grid effect, where you can snap fields to the grid. So instead of creating a table and dragging and dropping controls, you can sort of build that same effect. I'm going to create an email text control here. You can drag and drop these fields and they will snap to the grid however you want them to align. So you can still get some nice alignment here. Let's take a look at some of the other fields. We also have an image field. And this is the same as the image attachment field in InfoPath. we'll just call this, we can call this receipt if you want people to upload an image. And this receipt field, now you'll know that I'm inside that section that I designed, so it can only expand as far as the section. Here is the receipt. I'm going to go ahead and drag this down here underneath, and you can resize this however you want, and the image that people upload will be shrunk down to appear inside the size of this particular window. Let's see. There are many other different types of controls. I can go ahead and drag a submit button here. We'll just call this submit button. And this SharePoint submit button is automatically configured to submit to the library, the document library associated with this form when I first created the form template. Pete asks, can you apply formatting rules to fields like you can in InfoPath, i.e. phone number format? Yes. And this phone number field, because I dragged it and dropped it from the phone number, it already has that logic built into it. So that's a nice pre-configured thing. If you have strange-looking phone numbers, maybe you're looking for international phone numbers that are formatted a certain way, you can build that formatting as well. Let's actually take a look now at rules that are available. The rules are built from the Actions pane, which is available on the Properties tab up here on the ribbon. We'll take a look at Actions, and this is different from InfoPath. With InfoPath, as you may recall, all rules only execute when a field changes value. So you have to build your rules on the right fields, and they will only fire if the value of the field that they're associated with changes. With PDF ShareForms Designer, you can actually choose when your rules, or when your actions, as they're called here, will execute. When the field is first initialized, it's the first time someone actually creates the field or types into it. When someone enters the field, so when they tab to that field as they're filling out forms, when the field changes, when someone exits the field, when someone clicks on the field, when the field is full, when you move the mouse down or up, when you click the enter button on the mouse, when you exit the mouse. So there are all these different options you have of when you want the rule to run or kick off. Field exit is actually the one that's going to be analogous to InfoPath. So as you may recall, if you type something into a field, you actually have to tab out of the field in order for the change that you've typed into the field, or the choice that you've picked from the drop-down or whatever, to actually register with InfoPath. So that would be equivalent to the field exit action. So once you've clicked the action you want to kick off your rule, you're taken to the rules pane. And there's a lot of configuration that you can do here. The if is equivalent to the InfoPath condition, the condition that you want the rule to run under. There are a bunch of different conditions that are available to you. You can pick a condition that says field equals. So I can have a condition here that says if, let's say if name equals Jennifer, we'll just do that. So here we go. So I need to include a data field here. So I'm going to pick name, and I'm going to drag that over here. So if name is equal to, and we'll just do Jennifer as a simple rule, and then we decide what we want to do. So now that we've built our condition, we will actually choose the action that we want. In order to do that, we'll go back up to the rules element pane. So we've set our conditions. Now we have actions that we can do. I'm going to have this set a field value. If you've ever used SharePoint Designer, SharePoint Workflow Designer, this sort of configuration will look very familiar to you. So I'm going to set a field's value. So I can set field to some value. I'm going to go down here to data fields. I'm going to pick the email field, and I'm just going to have this auto-populate my email. There. Very simple. And once you're done entering this, you simply click Save. You have the ability to add as many rules as you want, so I could add another rule if I want. And you also have the option to either stop or continue to the next rule. That's equivalent on InfoPath to the little checkbox that says, don't run any additional rules if the conditions of this rule are met. I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember exactly what it says. Or you can leave it at continue to the next rule, which in InfoPath is like leaving that checkbox unchecked, so it'll go on and execute all the rest of the rules you have on that field. Okay, I'm only going to do one rule here, so I'm going to click Save. That's great. Okay, so I've built a very simple little form here, I'm just going to deploy this and show it in action, and then we'll switch over to the expense report template. So let's see. I am going to click Save first of all. One thing I noticed is there's no autosave, so if you actually exit without saving your changes, it won't save anything. I wasted about an hour and a half designing the expense report template without realizing that at first. So after you've saved your template, you can go ahead and click Deploy, and it'll give you a choice here of changing the destination. Remember, when I first created this template, I associated it with the documents library. It's giving me a chance to change that, and said, okay, that's great. I'm going to keep it in my documents library. It validates the template, lets me know that the template structure is valid, and then it goes ahead and it deploys the template. Oops, following fields already exist with a different type. Well, that's no fun. Let me go in here. I think this has an issue to do with the SharePoint mapping that I've set up. Here I have data binding. Give me a second here as I try to undo the, SharePoint. Okay, so I'm going to actually unmap this and see if that, it's the first time I've gotten that particular error. So I'm going to unmap the name field, and you'll see over here the little blue link icon has disappeared. And let me resave and redeploy. Go through these steps again. Let's see if it likes me better. There we go. Okay, it didn't like the fact. I think there's already a name field in the documents library, so it didn't like that. Okay, so now I can open up that library, and I can open up a new form and fill it out by going to the Files tab in the ribbon at the top and clicking New Document. This will open up the form that I just designed. And let's test the rule that I just typed in here. Let's see. If I type in Jennifer and exit the field, you'll see that that particular rule executed. It auto-populated with my email address, phone number, with phone number, it only takes numbers with the auto formatting. Let's see. There's my phone number, and you'll see that it automatically formats that phone number according to the American phone number formatting rules. Okay, I've filled out everything. Let's try this image field, and this will simply bring up a standard file attachment dialog. I pick the image I want, click Open, and it actually displays the image resized for the particular window that I created on the Designer. Okay, I've populated everything. I'm going to go ahead and click Submit. It's submitted my form, and you'll see here is the document sitting right here. It mapped the phone number field just as I told it to the SharePoint column that I created called Phone, and there you go. Okay, so let's take a slightly more complicated example. And to do that, let me click Finish here and go back to I'm back in the ShareForms templates library. I'm going to open up an expense report that I built yesterday. And this, of course, is a more complicated form and gives you an idea of how you can format things. Here I have used the label controls in order to create these section headers. Off here on the hierarchy, you can see that I've arranged things in sections in a very logical, clear and logical manner. So each one of these sections down here is represented in this hierarchy. I know exactly what fields are where. And one thing I haven't showed you yet are repeating sections. So down here in the expenses section, and this is modeled after the sort of stock expense report form that you've probably seen that comes with InfoPath, I've included a repeating section here. Another thing this hierarchy is good for, if you've got all your controls sort of packed into a tight space, and say I wanted to select the repeating section. I can't really tell where that repeating section is. I just happen to get lucky and select it. But over here in the hierarchy, I can simply select it in the hierarchy, and I know that that section is highlighted, and I can therefore adjust various different actions. So with the repeating section, I've actually included two of the buttons to add and delete. So I use the Add Item button and the Remove Item button, and you have the ability to customize what appears on that button. I've decided to represent them using a plus and minus. That's something that my users should know. I've included a date field, description, a category field. You can see that there are drop-downs on this. You have the ability to bind these, just as you do in InfoPath, to external data sources. Oh, that's the default value. Let me go to over here underneath Item Values. So I'm on the Properties ribbon. Over here under Item Values, you can see I've decided to select a SharePoint list to populate that particular drop-down. From all the lists on my site, I've chosen a special list that I set up just for this. I've chosen the column from that list that I want to pull my values from, and I've decided that I want them to be ascending instead of descending in terms of sort. You also have the ability to add some special camel query scripts here if you want to do additional sorting as well. Maybe you want to only pull out values for which another column is equal to yes or no. You can do that sort of filtering as well. You also have the ability to directly enter default values, which I've done for the category drop down over here. Underneath Item Values, I chose manual in this particular case, and you can see I manually entered all of the different values I wanted to appear by simply clicking Add Item and typing the value in. I'll delete that last option. And you also have the ability to choose additional sources, additional data sources that you've added to this particular form template. The last thing I want to show before I actually demonstrate the form in action is rules. I remember way back in my slides I said this was a codeless solution. I put a little asterisk next to it. One thing I wanted to add to this form yesterday was a hide show rule where once you entered a value for category, it would show this additional section down here that lets you attach a receipt. So for that, I click the category field, which is highlighted, and I go back up here to Actions. And another drawback right now is there's no way, at least not that I know of seeing where your rules are. So I happen to remember that I put the rule on field Exit. So under field Exit, all I wanted was for each repeating section row, as I use as I add a new row to the repeating section, I wanted to have that hide show rule work on each row individually. There's no built-in rule elements, conditions, and actions that will allow you to do that. So what I had to do was add a bit of JavaScript. Before I do that, so if you want to add scripts, down here under Actions, you'll notice there's an action called Execute Script. And you can use this to basically access what's going on behind all of the different nodes, the fields in the form behind the scenes in JavaScript. And this was the script that I typed in here. If you're used to coding, then you will be able to recognize what's going on here. I won't bother explaining. I'll just say that when someone selects a value from the category drop-down, it will show the receipt section. Otherwise, the receipt section will stay hidden. So that is a bit of a caveat. This is a codeless solution, but in order to get some of the functionality that's built into InfoPath, for right now, you will need to add bits of JavaScript or C# script in order to get that functionality. Let's see, Gail says, can you use Active Directory like the people pickers in InfoPath? I'm actually not entirely sure about accessing Active Directory, Gail. I'll have to look that information up for you and provide it later. Okay, so we've designed this form. Before we go, let me just quickly go over the ribbons at the top, and then we'll see the form in action, and we'll conclude. You do have a preview ability available on the Home tab. Unfortunately, as I mentioned before, actions do not work in preview mode, so you'll get this nice little pop-up window reminding you of that when you preview. And yes, actions do not work in preview mode. So if I select something from category, you'll know that nothing else appears. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're previewing. It's an unfortunate drawback. Oops, where did I just, there we go. So there's my template. You have the ability to save the template, deploying the template. Another useful feature, since all your templates are stored online, you could potentially run into a situation where multiple people are working on the template at the same time. That's why they include this checkout feature. So if you want to ensure that no one else is modifying the form template while you're working on it, you would simply check it out, make your changes, save them, maybe deploy it, do some testing. When you're done, just simply check it back in to make it available for other people to modify. You have multiple views as well. You can add different views, or you can use the hide show rules, which is a technique that we at Qdabra use a lot, so that we really only work with one view, and we use hide show rules to display the information that the user needs to see at that particular time. You can zoom in, zoom out. Here is where the grid settings are. I have everything set to snap to grid so that everything aligns. You have the ability to adjust the grid settings. You can adjust the spacing and the vertical spacing and horizontal spacing. I'm not sure what the units are on this. You'll just have to play around with it and see if it's till you get it to your liking. The page design tab, I use normal layout where everything is just in one long continuous view, because for me that's similar to what I'm used to doing with InfoPath. Here you get to choose which page is the default page to appear. Remember, we're working with PDF forms, so they're paginated unlike InfoPath. And you have the ability to upload a background image as well, which is a nice feature that I don't think works with InfoPath browser forms. Developer, here is where you can have rules that execute on form load. This is an important one as well. Rules that happen when the PDF form is actually synchronized with its SharePoint site. Rules that occur on submit, so you've got some stock rules here. And of course you can always add rules through actions to the individual fields on the form like I've showed you. Here is where you would add different data sources. You can add a data source that connects directly to a SharePoint list or library. For the purposes of this product, list and library are considered to be the same thing. Or you can use business connectivity services, which is currently not enabled on this site, so I can't demo it. You can use this to access all sorts of different other web services, external data sources as well. So that's a very useful feature here. If you really want to write code, you can definitely write code. You can include scripts that are global events that will affect the entire form, scripts that will execute when the user finishes editing any field in the form. So these are some global scripts that you can use that will affect the entire form. And I have to actually select a field to show the rest of the ribbon. Here we have another ribbon menu that's just appeared, and I've been using this, as you've seen. This is the menu that affects the control. So these are all the different controls. These are all the different parameters for the control. I can change the font. I can shade the particular field that I have selected. I can adjust the alignment, change the label. I can change the position of the caption if I wanted to. If I change this to, say, 35, you'll see that the field is now very close to the field name. If I increase that back up to 75, so that's how you can adjust the alignment. With InfoPath, remember you'd be using a table, and the field name would be in a different cell from the field itself, and that would be how you would do this alignment. Here, you simply adjust the reserve value. You can adjust the size of the particular box that contains the field. You can add default values if you would like. You can make it a calculate value, a default value, or have no values. And of course you can add actions. Then over here are the properties that affect only the data field. And right now, this affects the actual data field behind the control on the form. And right now, this only includes the name of the field and the particular column that it's been linked to. Okay, so that's a basic overview of the designer mode. Let's actually see this form in action. In order to do that, I'm going to navigate to the expense report library that I have set up here. And I've set a default rule here to auto-populate the report date. I have these columns are highlighted because they are required. Now I have a formatting rule. This is the default formatting rule for the email field, and you'll see I just typed in something that's clearly not an email. It will actually give you a pop-up that tells you this is not a valid email address. Please enter a valid email address. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. The department drop-down works exactly as you would expect. This is pulling from the SharePoint list behind the scenes. I will go and type the rest of these. And down here we have the repeating section that I've set up. So again, these are the customized add and remove controls. Unlike InfoPath, you are not allowed to remove the default row using these buttons. You would have to add a script behind the scenes. Again, this is functionality that InfoPath has, that PDF ShareForms, you would have to add a script in order to get that here. So I can't delete that row, but I can add more rows if I want to using these buttons. So this is how the repeating sections would work. Oop, and I obviously have an error here where my submit button is not moving down, probably because I didn't include it inside a section. So we won't do that for right now. And that hide show rule, I'll show that in effect once I've selected a value for category. The receipt control appears. I can upload that receipt. And notice that this rule is taking effect only on each row individually. And I also have a rule on the total field to make it the sum of all. Oops, that was working earlier. I must have broken it. My bad. Earlier this total field was actually summing all of the amounts in the repeating section. You'll just have to trust me on that. So once we've filled out all of the fields, we simply submit the report, and this will appear in the expense report document library. And here I actually have a customized name. Right now, in order to customize the name of the forms, you actually have to include a bit of scripting as well. That was something that I discovered. It was a bit unfortunate. As you know, in InfoPath, you're very used to just being able to type in the names of fields that you would like in order to create your unique form name for each form that's submitted. And you'll see that the fields that I promoted or associated with the SharePoint columns appear as well. So there you go. That is an overview, a very detailed, long overview of the PDF ShareForms Enterprise. So that's it for today's webinar. I see a couple of questions that I want to address. Eva asks, can you apply? Let me actually drag this over here so you can see it. Let's see. Oops. Everyone can hear me. That's great. Is there conditional formatting for sections? Yes, there actually is, and I didn't show that because, again, I mean, this is an entire form design software. There's a limit to how much I can show in the time that I have for this webinar. You can, Pete, yeah, I think Pete, I answered this question for you before. You can apply formatting rules, and you can even use some pre-formatted fields as well. Eva asked, can you apply custom CSS to the form? Yes, you can apply a lot of customization behind the scenes using scripting as well, so you can do that. As far as auto-populating current user information, for example, using Active Directory, SharePoint User Services, I'm actually going to have to look that up, and I'll get back to all the people on the webinar today with that answer. Cost. Yes, I didn't fill in the date picker. Let me quickly show you the date picker field. I'll just go ahead and open up this. It does have a drop-down date picker like you're used to seeing. Let's go ahead and find the date on one of these. And you'll see you've got your date picker here. You can choose whatever date you want. And right now I have this set formatted to show the entire date. Once you tab out, you can change the formatting so that it shows the date with the forward slashes if you prefer to see that as well. Okay, so that's the date picker. And Tom, last question here. Tom asks about cost. That is a great segue into the next slide that I have. Here is current information on the costs. For the PDF ShareForms on demand, it's only $75 per month for a block of 50 SharePoint users, so that's actually relatively inexpensive. Again, to use that option, you need to have your own form design software, so you need to have Adobe Acrobat or some other PDF form designer, and then you'd simply upload the finished forms or the finished form templates to on demand and configure them for submit. For PDF ShareForms Enterprise, this starts at $7,900 for up to 100 SharePoint users. This includes the license, it includes the mobile client as well, which I didn't show in this particular webinar. It includes 12 months of tech support as well as user training, which I misspelled there, and I'm just noticing now. There are, however, fully functional free trials available for both of these products, and the free trials are what you've been seeing in today's demo. I believe the Enterprise trial is a 30-day trial, which is plenty of time to get used to it and play around with it. I've been contacting their support hotline with various questions, and they're pretty good at getting back to me in less than 24 hours. And sometimes a lot less than 24 hours as well. One last question we have from Juan. When you're using a script, does a form need to be approved by an admin, similar to what has to be done with InfoPath? No, it actually doesn't. All of the scripts that I put in behind the scenes, you don't need to be an admin in order to use those scripts. Okay, just a quick overview about our webinar kits. There will actually not be a webinar kit for this particular session because the products that I'm using are not Qdabra products. You'll actually have to go to the PDF ShareForms site in order to use that. Let me quickly give you that website. And this is not cooperating. All right. So there is the PDF ShareForms site if you'd like to go there. And you can register for a free trial and use it out yourself and see if that is a solution that you'd be interested in using in your particular environment. Thank you very much. When you log out of today's webinar, you will receive a feedback form. If you send us that, you will get the slides for today's presentation. I can include the demo expense report template that I've built if you would like to take that. And then if you register for a free trial of PDF ShareForms Enterprise, you will be able to import that template and play around with it yourself and get a look at some of the scripts that I put in behind the scenes. All right, thank you very much. Are there any additional questions before we end today's webinar, which has actually run really long? And most of you are probably anxious to get back to work or to leave work, depending on where you are right now.